All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to lesson number 26 now, which I think is going to be one of the final lessons of our journey through SQL and databases. But there will be some bonus videos that will be available after this one, so no worries, there's still good content coming your way. So in lesson number 26, we're going to be talking about how to back up your database and how to back it up automatically, which was a very popular, came by very popular request from many of you, so of course I will include it in this course. So like I said, in this lesson you're going to learn how to back up your entire database, or databases if you have many. You're going to learn how to secure them in the cloud. Okay, this is what I do, and I'll explain exactly how I do it and why I do it. And I'm going to teach you how to automate this entire system so you don't ever have to worry about this ever again. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So first off, how to back up a database. It's actually not too difficult. I use the command line executable program to back up any of my databases. I say back up an entire database, but obviously you can use the same command over and over to back up all of your databases. The executable file, the executable program, if you will, is known as MySQL dump. Okay, so it's essentially all about taking the data inside of the database and dumping it into an SQL file. All right, so that's why it's called MySQL dump. So the MySQL dump command can be used in a similar style to the MySQL command, which is what we use to connect to our database via the command line, which we learned early on in this course. The only difference between the two is that with the MySQL dump command, you need to tell it what database to back up and where to essentially store the file that it's going to be backing the contents up into. Okay, so you need to tell it those two things, as well as the normal stuff about how to connect to your database with the appropriate credentials. So here's an example of the command. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the MySQL dump command, which will need to be executed inside of the bin folder or wherever it is that you have your MySQL program installed. Okay, and then you specify the username that you can use to connect and the password that you use to connect to your database. And so this is all exactly the same as just the regular old MySQL command. Okay, so that would work to actually connect, more or less, to connect to your database. And then what we're doing in addition to that is that we're specifying the name of the database that we want to back up. And then we sort of use this greater than sign to show that we're taking the database and we're moving the contents this way into a backup file. Okay, so that's kind of why they use the greater than symbol. It's kind of like an arrow. So think of it as I'm taking the data is flowing from the database into the file that we want to create. Okay, so this will actually create the SQL file that when run will exactly recreate your database. So it's going to take all the data and recreate it in an SQL runnable SQL script. Okay, so it's actually quite cool. So with your database backed up into a file, you might be wondering, well, how do I use this file that's just been created to recreate my database, right? So if we just used this command to take all the contents of the database and turn it into a SQL file, how then can we take the SQL file and go the other way and create a database from it, right? Because it's of no use to back up data if you can't use the backup to recreate the database as it should be created. So you can use the command line once again to accomplish this task of recreating your database. So the syntax you just use is the same syntax as the regular old MySQL. So instead of saying MySQL dump, we're just saying MySQL to sort of connect to our database. And again, we use the same parameters to connect to our database. The only difference is now we type in the name of the database that we want to create. Okay, so there can be any database name you really want. I believe anyway it can be any database name. I'm going to find out in just a moment. I'm going to show you exactly how I do this step by step from the command line. But I believe you can specify any database name and it'll create that database based on the actual file, the SQL file. I put location of SQL file, but you need to actually specify, .sql. So the actual, not just a location, but the actual name of the file as well. And note that the sign here has changed to a less than sign, which is sort of an arrow pointing to the left. So now you see that since we're recreating the database, the data is flowing from the file to an actual real database. So it's going to create a real database using this command, okay? So again, in contrast, we move back one slide, and we had to use the greater than sign because it was from the database to the file, and now we move forward, and we're going from the file to the database. Okay, so, and just a quick note: if the database being restored is particularly large, apparently it's a tough word to say. Particularly, it can take a while to complete the actual task. So I've had databases when I worked in my professional career. Some of the databases were so large, in the order of terabytes in size, that they would take a full day to recreate. So I'm talking, 8 to 16 hours of processing to actually recreate a database. So it was often, if we needed to actually get a copy of the database, we'd have to submit a request to the database team, and then usually the next business day it would be available for use. So, but obviously with a small database, if you just have a few things in it, it's going to be done in a matter of probably less than a second. Okay, it does go fast. It's just when you get to the point where you have such huge volumes of data, it takes a while. So just a quick note there. So I'm going to show you exactly how to go about doing exactly everything that I just told you about. So don't worry about that stuff if you don't fully grasp how to actually make it happen. I'm going to show you. So having said that, let's actually move on to talking about how to secure the database. Okay, and I'm just going to be very quick with this because I don't think I need to go into much detail. So I use something called my Dropbox account. If you are not familiar with Dropbox, then you can absolutely just type it into Google, Dropbox, and you'll see exactly what Dropbox is. Dropbox is one of the more popular companies that are used for online cloud secure storage. Okay, so what that means is you can put your files into a folder on your computer, and the Dropbox program will automatically see that there's a new file in the folder, and automatically, in the background, back up that file into your own personal, essentially your own personal folder on the internet, on the cloud. Okay, so it uploads it to the internet, essentially. And then that file in the cloud will be available to you whenever and wherever you are. Okay, so it's very, very convenient to use this kind of technology. And on top of it, they are fiercely, these Dropbox people are fiercely dedicated to providing security for your files. So I'm of the opinion that it's a great solution. Okay, it's a great solution because that's their number one priority, is making sure that your files are secure on the web. Now, when we're talking about databases that are just for you, for fun, just to play around with, then it's a no-brainer. I mean, storing it in Dropbox is not going to be any sort of security issue. But for me, I mean, I do have some of my own data that I would perceive as being sensitive. But I trust Dropbox because they have such, like I said, dedication to providing secure environments for storing your files. Okay, so that's why I use it. Plus, like I said, it's dead simple to use. You just point the MySQL dump command. You point it right into your Dropbox folder. So if you remember, you say MySQL dump, and you tell it what database to take and actually create a file from. And when you create the file, you just point it to your Dropbox folder. And once you run that MySQL dump command, you hit enter, it will just create the file right into Dropbox, and Dropbox will automatically see it and back it up for you into the cloud, and obviously make it secure as well. So it's just an automatic, step 1, step 2, done process. Now, that's not fully automated because you need to actually go ahead and you actually need to type in the MySQL dump command. And you might be saying, well, I want it to be completely automatic and I want it to be hands-off. Well, don't worry about it. I know exactly what you can do. So this works well on a PC, on a Windows PC, but if you have a Mac, I'm sure there's some equivalent way of doing this. Again, I'm not a Mac person. I don't use Macs at all on a daily basis, so I'm not familiar with the equivalent part of this. But if you really are struggling with figuring this part out, you can absolutely reach out to me and ask me how to actually do this. Okay, so you can reach out to me directly at trevor@javavideotutorials.net. Okay, that's my main email address that I use for all these types of questions and whatnot. So trevor@javavideotutorials.net. If you're stuck, I can help you out. So. All right, on a Windows PC, I just create something called a new task via the task scheduler. Okay, and maybe I'll show you how to do this as well, just because if you've never done it before, it might be a little bit strange. But in any case, there's a program on your Windows PC called Task Scheduler. Okay, it's been around for quite a while inside of Windows, and it allows you to do just what it sounds like. You can create a task that can be run on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a one-time basis, on whatever you like. Okay, you can create your own schedule, and the task that it can execute or carry out is quite generic. So what I do for my tasks is I create something called a batch file, .bat file, okay, with the appropriate commands to create these backups for the databases, okay? You could think of a batch file, a .bat file, as being exactly the same thing as a text file. Okay, you're just creating a .txt file, essentially. You can edit it with Notepad or Notepad++ or whatever Notepad type program you're using. The only difference is when you instead of creating it as a .txt file, you're going to create it as a .bat file, which means that it will be runnable, which means you can double click on that file and it will actually execute the commands inside of the file, which are stored as text. So, for example, I created a file called db_backups.bat. So it's my db backups batch file. This file can be created and edited, like I said, with a simple Notepad type program. And I put in the appropriate command line commands to complete the necessary task that I wanted to do. Okay. So, for example, my actual commands that I use inside of my batch file is just this. So I tell it to go to the appropriate directory, because like I said, you need to be in the SQL Server or MySQL Server's bin directory in order to run the MySQL dump command. Okay, unless you're a more advanced user and you put this on your path variable. If you know how to do that in your environment variables, you set this on your path, then you can execute MySQL dump from wherever you like. But for me, I just haven't done that yet because apparently I'm a little bit too lazy. So I just have it navigate to the MySQL Server bin directory with this command. Okay, and if I were to type this into an actual command line, it would do just that. It would go directly to that folder. So this is just like I'm treating it like I'm being on the command line. I hit enter, and then the next command is my MySQL dump command, which is where I give the username, the password, the DB name that I want to back up, and the file that I want to create. And again, I point this file to the Dropbox folder. Okay, and then I save the file. So that's my dbbackups.batch file. It's literally 2 lines long. Okay, and then finally I create this new basic task, this new task via the task scheduler that executes my dbbackups batch file at a regular interval. Okay, and then there you go. Windows will take care of it for me. It'll run whenever it is. If I specified it as daily or weekly or monthly or whatever, it'll run that file, which will automatically go to this directory and execute the MySQL dump command, which will create the SQL file, which will put it into your Dropbox folder, and Dropbox will take it and back it up to the web, into the cloud, completely automatically for you. So you can literally have this done for you while you sleep, every day, every hour, every week, whatever you like. Completely hands-off, completely automated. So I believe that's the end of this presentation. So now that we've covered all that good stuff about automating the backup process and whatnot, now I want to actually take you through the steps for actually doing it so you can see it right in front of you. So the actual real-world example of me carrying out this method. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip over to the next lesson. We're going to wait until part 2 of this to actually show you how this is actually done. So please join me in the next part of this lesson number 26, where I'm going to show you exactly how I go about fulfilling this process of setting up the automated backup system. Can't wait to see you there. Bye for now.